Welcome. This is the Founders Atlas, a podcast exploring entrepreneurship around the world through the eyes of visionary founders. I'm your host, Mayuri Reddy. Today, we are traveling to Lagos, Nigeria. Nigeria has a population of 237 million, making it the sixth largest country on the planet. And Lagos is home to over 17 million people, making it the biggest city in the country. And it's growing fast. Nigeria is diverse, with 500 languages being spoken and 370 distinct ethnic groups, the largest of which are the Hausa, Yoruba, and the Igbo. And Lagos, it's at the center of it all. Lagos is the country's economic powerhouse, contributing a huge share of Nigeria's GDP. It's also the heart of Nigeria's startup scene. Companies like Flutterwave, Andela, Paystack all started there, earning Lagos its reputation as the Silicon Valley of Africa. But building there isn't easy. Infrastructure can be unpredictable, so can inflation, and access to capital isn't always straightforward. And yet, entrepreneurs in Lagos keep finding ways to make things work. I first learned about Seyi and Crop2Cash during an event in Berlin called the Africa Impact Awards. He was a finalist selected by his peers, and he ended up going home the winner. Though we didn't meet, as soon as I heard about what he was building, I immediately sent him a LinkedIn request. Crop2Cash is an agri-tech company on a mission to make access to financing easier for farmers. Their solution has already reached over 500,000 farmers across Nigeria, creating a marketplace that helps them secure the inputs they need for their farms. And beyond that, they're building a simple yet effective pathway for payments and financing, helping farmers create long-term prosperity, not just survive from season to season. This work resonated with me personally. My dad grew up in a farming village outside of Bangalore, India, and for the last decade, he's been working to cultivate our ancestral land. Watching him do this has been humbling. Agriculture is tough work. Not only is it incredibly labor-intensive, it's also full of risk and uncertainty. So when I saw what Seyi was doing, I immediately understood the impact. He's not just building a business, he's creating something that supports hardworking people in an industry that's overdue for innovation. What struck me most about this conversation was seeing that entrepreneurial spirit embodied within Seyi. I had long been made aware that there was a true culture within Nigeria of thriving for more and building to create for oneself. And while it's clear Seyi is inspired by the opportunity and challenges of innovation, he also has great values, cares about uplifting others, and truly lives by his why. He inspired me to think about entrepreneurship less from a place of fear. Building a business is hard, but my key takeaway from Seyi was that you might as well enjoy the ride. And with that, let's get into the conversation. Welcome. This is the Founders Atlas. Seyi, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having me.
And before we get into everything and go into all the deep questions, would love for you to just, in your own words, share what is Crop2Cash and what is the problem that you are working to solve?
Okay. So Crop2Cash is an agri-tech company. People call us an agri-tech company because we use software innovations to solve problems in the agricultural sector. So it all started with trying to reduce post-harvest waste loss for farmers in Nigeria, which is as high as 60% the last time I checked. And then we discovered so many other problems that we are currently now solving. So it's fair to say that we're basically transforming the agricultural sector in Nigeria one smallholder farmer at a time by creating financial solutions, knowledge solutions, and we also connect them to service providers that gives them the best inputs. All of these are aimed at improving their productivity. So in our own words and in the words of our customers, we're the farmers' bank.
And what got you interested in agriculture specifically?
Because I'm actually an agronomist. Yeah, I have a background in agronomy, and that was what actually brought about the idea that we now call Crop2Cash today. So my co-founder, Michael, is a computer scientist, and he was trying to create solutions in the same space. And he's like, oh, where else do I have to call? Even my friend. So he placed the call across to me. Yo, this is what I'm trying to do. And I was like, okay, cool. That sounds smart. And we just started. So it's more or less like trying to change the world without knowing where to start from, but then starting regardless. And we're here today.
Amazing. And you, if I remember correctly, your co-founders are also your friends. What has been the experience of building a company alongside your friends?
It's actually very interesting. So there's this joke I make that I used to be very close friends with Michael until we built Crop2Cash. So now it's more or less like we're married, it's like like we've been married for long. So everything is just business. You know, the way married couples tend to focus on the kids, and so we're more focused on our brainchild that we barely have time to connect as friends. But it's been very interesting, and I really appreciate every step of the journey. It's cool because where else to build businesses with if not your friends? So days when you guys disagree, it's really easier for you to like come back because you know you're all working towards the same goal, and these people always have your back at the end of the day. So it's been interesting. I won't have it any other way.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, the way I was able to learn about you was through the presentation demo day that you did for the Africa Impact Festival that took place in Berlin. And you were part of the Westerwelle Foundation's accelerator program. Could you tell me a little bit about what the startup ecosystem is like in Lagos, but also because, of course, you worked within many different accelerators. I would love to understand how you and your co-founders also were supported by the community that you're in.
The startup ecosystem in Nigeria is actually pretty solid, given the fact that Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa were like the pioneers of all of these things we now start to call startups. So now we have startups from Uganda, startups from Rwanda, but then the bulk of investments started from places like Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. So far it's pretty interesting and also pretty, should I say, competitive, but at the same time there's still room for a lot more. So I was talking to a co-founder, a fellow founder from the Westerwelle Foundation program then, and it was like it feels like there's a lot of us and still there's still few of us in this space. I was like, I totally understand what you're saying. So some of the problems a lot of startups that are solving in this part of the world are still problems that even though they are doing the best job possible, there's still room for more. So I feel like we could still do with a lot more players, lots more innovators, and that's just the truth of it.
Do you feel like there are barriers to starting a company in Lagos that are different than barriers that you would see in other parts of the world, other parts of Africa, or do you feel like the barriers are similar?
Okay, so this is actually a very interesting question, and I would say yes and no. So I believe there are barriers, but then life is relative. Being an innovator has taught me with every challenge comes opportunities with it. So you could say most of the challenges that founders face in Nigeria can also be something to build innovation. So when there is no problem, there is minimal innovation. There is also that not being, it's more or less like a privilege than a barrier. But then there are also other barriers like investment, being investment ready, getting the necessary exposure that you need to properly propel your business forward, getting connected to accelerators, getting into accelerators. It's a whole lot. And also business registration and compliance in Nigeria it can do with a lot more improvements. So those are the things that basically discourage founders, but at the same time, there are lots of opportunities to be exploited. So it's always better to start. So what I tell most young founders is just start. My advice to you 2 years ago would be don't do it, but then now just start because we could do a lot more. We could.
Can I ask you why 2 years ago would you have said don't do it? What happened 2 years ago that maybe shifted your mindset for a bit?
There's this saying, they say God laughs when you make plans. So there's always that phase in your business where you feel like nothing is working and I'm just a joke. During that phase of your business, if you could see it through, be a little bit more resilient, just try as much as possible to weather that storm, then things will probably change. So when I started, it was all levels of enthusiasm, passion. And then I discovered that the business basically teaches you how to be humble. So it was during that process of coming to terms with some of the things that are not so perfect that I feel like, okay, don't do this. I would never advise anyone to do this. But then after that, now that I'm, should I say, on the other side of the fence, now I just tend to encourage people, you can do it, just climb. It's just a little push, you know? So that's why 2 years ago I would have been like, nah, don't do it. It's not worth the stress. Life was really kicking my butt then.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And at the same time, I think you're so right that oftentimes the biggest thing that you need to do is just to start. Otherwise, the idea sits in your head and you just never get anywhere. So you have to push yourself to go beyond the comfort zone. So it sounds like you really did that. I want to talk a little bit about maybe what that process has been like of going into that role of being a founder. Did you ever see yourself as somebody that was going to be an entrepreneur? Like when you were growing up, were you looking at founders and looking up to them, or did becoming a founder sort of just happen?
I would say yes. I always knew I would be a man of business, but I never really took the time to look at founders generally. So I learned how to be an entrepreneur from my mom. My mom is a serial entrepreneur, but then all she does is buying and selling. She's not in the innovation space like we are and all of that. But then I learned very important things from helping her manage her business. So I learned the power of showing up every day, even though you don't feel like, because she always tells me you have to show up. You don't know when your life might change, so you have to be present for it to actually happen to you. So she taught me the power of showing up. And also, I've always been an entrepreneur before I started Crop2Cash. So I was a student entrepreneur in school. I was into designing clothes, designing wares and all of that. So I had this collection of varsity jackets, sweatshirts that I was into. My co-founder, Michael, was always buying shirts from me, doing this. So he always knew I was an entrepreneur. So sometimes he claims he learned how to run a business through just watching me from a distance. So and it was perfect that we basically teamed up to do this. So that is where I got my drive to be an entrepreneur. So most times I don't really look up to any entrepreneur. Yeah, I say that to people and they look at me like I'm crazy. Like I don't really think I have a role model or something. I just do my thing.
Yeah, fair enough. Is following the pathway of entrepreneurship something that's quite common in Lagos and in Nigeria as a whole?
In one way or the other, I'll say yes. And the reason being, given the economic situation of Nigeria, you have to maybe do something on the side. So you see people with 9 to 5 jobs that also have a business they're running on the side. You see people that work for the government and they have this elaborate business that they run on the side. It's just to like maybe get an extra leg forward in life and all of that. But then it's basically it makes you do more. It commands you do more. So there's always that element in almost every, like you can't see a household with not one entrepreneur. It's just the scale and the type of entrepreneurship endeavor you're into. So we have lots of small and medium scale businesses in this part of the world. So that's basically it.
Very cool. My first kind of exposure to what Lagos was like was actually from a documentary special by Anthony Bourdain. And he goes to Lagos, and I was so impressed and enthralled but how many businesses all of the people he was speaking to had. Like there was this drive and this hustle in the city that I found to be very, very interesting. It actually reminded me a lot of India too, right? Like the streets kind of felt busy in the same way that India is. And I was actually researching it a bit, and I didn't know that Indians are a huge, huge minority group in Nigeria. That's actually one of the biggest minority groups that there is there, which is pretty incredible. And I think for a lot of people don't know that just how diverse Nigeria is, right? There's like 250 different ethnic groups, 500 different languages. It's a very, very diverse country. And it makes sense, right? It has so much trade that's going through it. And I'm just curious for you, what has diversity within the country also done in terms of the way that you operate your business, right? So you're working with farmers that might speak different languages, might have different customs. How do you navigate doing and building a business and building trust with people from different cultures and from different perspectives on how to run their business?
Okay, so my number one principle is be a good person. I know this is not going to sound like the most honest thing coming from an entrepreneur, or should I say capitalist, but then be a good person. The reason I'm saying this is because I have had to travel to virtually every part of Nigeria. There's 36 states in this country, and I've been to 32 states, including the so-called red zones. And what I discovered is you don't act superior, you don't believe you're superior. These are your people. So it's best to meet them at the exact point of their need, at their convenience, and also don't take anything for granted. So I've seen lots of entrepreneurs fail because they did not know the best way to interact with the customers. All of our products are available in their local languages. That is one thing. So we don't limit it to English because not everyone speaks English. Not everyone has a formal education, but they understand alphabets and they understand numbers because they use it in their local language. So sometimes I'm forced to even learn phrases in these local languages that I do not originally speak. So I never travel without a translator because I can't just speak English at a stretch and expect them to get all of what I'm saying. So I always travel with a translator. So we talk to them, we interact with them in their local language. Sometimes we even dress like them. It's really crazy now that I have the dreadlocks on. So most times when I go to the north, they look at me like, oh, who is this American? So they have this phrase where they use for people that don't necessarily look like them. And I try to fit in, but then what can I do? So it's actually very interesting. You will learn a lot. And that is one thing that has been very interesting for me. I pride myself on knowing a lot, but then when you meet these people, you're very open, you get to learn a lot. So first rule, be very good, be a good person. That way they warm up to you real quick. Number two, make the products in the best way they can interact with it. That is another way to build trust. When your product works and the users can interact with it, then you're good. And lastly, not superior to anyone. Your knowledge is not superior. Your university knowledge is nothing on the field. Co-founder said interacting with smallholder farmers gave him the business school knowledge he never got to get. So you learn a lot from farmers, and that's been very interesting for me.
And so you speak English mostly when you go to the farmers, but do you then have, so I think, is it Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa? Are those like the main three? Those are the main three languages?
So I speak Yoruba quite well. It is the other two that I need a translator for. Sometimes pretend to understand the language. I can count numbers of the alphabet up to 4 in Hausa. So baby steps.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's more than probably a lot of people that are working with them, so they probably really appreciate it. And, when I look at the numbers, I mean, I didn't know before doing research before our interview, I had no idea that Nigeria it's the sixth most populous country in the world. There's 21 million people in Lagos. So there's obviously a lot of people and a lot of interesting things happening there. When you think about the opportunities for somebody to, if someone was listening and they're saying, I'm curious about how to come to Lagos and invest, or I want to be a part of the growth of happening in Nigeria in whole, what would you say to them about how they need to come into Lagos or how they need to come into Nigeria in order to do it the right way? I wonder if there's something that they specifically could do in order to enter the market and really be successful.
Okay. So to invest in Nigeria is not so much of a problem. Coming into Nigeria should be easy for anyone from across the world. What I would just advise is to do your research into the companies you're trying to invest in. And also one thing is, when you look at countries like Nigeria, where there is lots of population is an opportunity, is an added advantage. And also there are so many things that could use innovation. Every single sector in Nigeria could use some innovation, from agri to health to you name it, finance. It was when we were trying to solve the financial inclusion problem in Nigeria that I actually realized that there is a financial orientation gap. There's a knowledge gap. There's so many things. So you could easily play in any space in Nigeria and you get your return on investment. All you need to do is identify the best startups to invest in and also do your due diligence. There is an elephant in the room whenever people mention countries like Nigeria and India. They sometimes call us the fraud capital of the world, the fraud capital of Africa, something like that. But then you just have to invest in the right startup. If you're trying to invest in a startup and they are very dodgy about due diligence, compliance, I would say that is a red flag for you. And also be open to physical due diligence. One thing we try to do at Crop2Cash when we have a potential investor, we even invite them down to the office. Oh, come over the office. When you meet the people behind the business that we're selling to you, then you get a lot more satisfaction. We have this investor from the US that visits Nigeria almost every year just to see the boys at Crop2Cash. He comes around, we have lots of fun. The last time we went to the north together, he was talking to me about how he kept a kidnap fund in case something happened. And I'm like, don't worry, my friend. So you just have to be open and very, very enthusiastic about investing. And I promise you, you'll get the best out of your investments.
One thing that is interesting about Nigeria is that the population is growing very quickly. There is a lot of opportunity. You see more accelerators happening to enter the market as well, right? With Westerwell, with other organizations that are looking to support this talent that is there and the innovation that's coming from there. What is actually the landscape for a founder like yourself to get funding? So how do you normally go about it? Is it at all different than maybe a startup that's based in another country, or do you go about it in a similar way?
Okay. So I would say there are similarities and there are differences. So for a startup in Nigeria, you might have to talk to a lot more investors before you get a yes. And that is what I also tell lots of young founders that I advise. There are times where even your geographic location might be the reason why you get a no. Sometimes it's not your business. Sometimes it's your metrics that doesn't really meet the criteria. So don't get discouraged by no's. Believe in what you're doing. Keep improving what you're doing. Take feedbacks when you get them. We are on a fundraising journey, which is going quite good. But then there was a time where it looked really bleak and it looked as if no one was buying what we're selling, and it sometimes might make you feel like a fraud or maybe you're not doing the right thing, but then it is what it is. So you might need to talk to more investors, you might get a lot more no's. It's mostly because a lot of people don't even understand the landscape well enough. But then on the good side of things, you would be forced to learn how to grow lean. So there are some policies and there are ways I run my business that are not really conventional, like the placement of our office. Our office is just 1 hour out of Lagos. Prefer to do outside Lagos than inside Lagos because of the housing and property prices in Lagos. The cost of running a business in Lagos is a little bit higher compared to where we are based. It gives me the perks of being able to run a business at a low burn rate. Another thing is the people that you work with, access to talents, because you can't underrate the value of talents in most of these innovations. So access to talents and being able to retain these talents is also a thing. And lastly, what I would just say is, okay, I've spoken about the challenges, I've spoken about some of the opportunities. One last thing that I will just say is running a business is hard. What I've gathered, it's a little bit harder in this part of the world. You need to be ready for that psychologically, physically, and mentally prepared for that. And just keep doing you, and things always pan out if it is for you. So most times I try as much as possible not to force anything. Another thing is, another good way you can keep your business afloat in Nigeria is grant financing. So business has done a lot on grant financing. We've had multiple grants with GSMA. We've had multiple grants with USAID. And one thing that I've learned from grant financing is it helps you improve as an entrepreneur. It forces you to work, and it also makes you pay attention to certain loopholes that could lead to bigger pitfalls in your business. A very good example is there was a grant we're currently closing right now that requires us training 1,500 agents. And the goal to training 1,500 agents is we distribute them at the ratio of 1 agent to 50 farmers. So if one agent gets to onboard 50 farmers, and I have 1,500 agents, and I'm still getting paid to train this. That's a win-win for me. So a lot of people shy away from grant financing because of maybe reporting, because you have to do a lot of reporting and mouth. But then that's where transparency comes to play and being open comes to play. So I highly recommend grant financing to a lot of startups. So, and that is one of the ways I've managed to build my business while at the same time facing the fundraising realities in Nigeria.
Do you think also, as you're saying, that Nigerians, or at least many people in Nigeria, also have multiple things going on beyond their 9 to 5? What do you think it is about Nigerian culture that it, despite it being more difficult to have businesses, still pushes people to do them? Where does that hustle come from?
You know what they say about pressure making diamonds? With every Nigerian that you meet, you always feel that drive. Sometimes it comes off as being too passionate, and it's mostly evolve or die with a lot of Nigerians here. So poverty is a thing, and there are lots of people that are living bottom of the pyramid. Like, you think this is the bottom of the pyramid, but then there are foundations under the pyramid. So you just have to do more. And also the currency and the economic realities, it's basically warrants you to do a lot more as a person, as an entrepreneur. So that's basically it. I would say it's just Nigeria, and it's that pressure that it's sometimes when people, even after people make it, they don't want to go back, so they still keep doing extra. So just very interesting. So
So
I
they
feel
can't
like it's
stop.
the pressure. Can't stop, won't stop.
I love that. Do you think Nigerians have a different definition of success? Or I guess maybe, what is your definition of success?
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. It's actually very interesting. I would say Nigerians have a different definition of success to mine. So initially, my definition of success used to be money in the bank when I was still very young and dumb. It was all, oh, money in the bank. Yeah, there's money in the bank. Ah, you're good, you're successful. But then I started finding new definitions of success as I grew. So to me, success sometimes might not necessarily translate to money in the bank. Being able to look at the number of lives you've impacted in your time is enough success to me, because I have seen some of that and I have experienced that feeling, and I know how warm that feeling is. So it is something that I would always want to improve the lives of people around me. And if I can manage to do that for, say, 10 million smallholder farmers in Nigeria, then I would be convinced that I would have lived a successful life. Another measure of success that I would like, it's also the quality of life that you live. Running a startup basically taught me how to cherish certain moments more. So before I started my business, I had a different worldview, but then getting into it, winning and losing in this space and all of that, it teaches you perspective. And one thing that I've discovered is the quality of life that you've lived is also a measure of success. But to the average Nigerian, money in the bank is the ultimate measure of success, but not to me anymore.
And is there a goal that people have? Is there an amount of money in the bank that they're all aiming for, or is it just a constant, just get more and more and more? I wonder, is there a lifestyle that people look out for, or like a class that they say, if I get this much money, then I'm good, or if I'm part of this community, I've made it?
Okay, with me personally, I feel like I have like an idea of when I would stop all of this. And I used to tell people that when I'm in my 40s, I'll just stop all of this and I'll be really chill, keep a home garden and be a stay-at-home husband or something to someone. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, so Nigerians have this, I have this, there's this phrase that I'm looking for. Yeah, it's a line by Kanye West. If you know the rapper Kanye West, it says, "Don't stare at money too much. It's Medusa," and it sticks with me. So a lot of people feel like when I make my first meal, then maybe I can relax. And then they make their first meal, and then they be like, won't be a bad idea to have 10. Then they go for 10. And then they make 10, they be like, it's only a bad idea to go for 100. And that is the concept of paying our money for too long. And I feel like a lot of people, most especially in this part of the world, are like that, such that people would commit age fraud just to stay in service and to be able to enjoy certain benefits. Some would reduce their age, some would just refuse to stop altogether. And with time, you can't beat time. So why not just stop when you can? And that's just how I feel. I was telling someone that the German footballer Toni Kroos, that the way he retired is the way I dream of retiring, right in my prime when everything is still working.
Yeah.
I can just kick back and relax.
I love that. I was actually recently talking to someone about this. Do you remember MySpace?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The guy who started MySpace, Tom, that guy I think had it right. He started MySpace. It became incredibly successful. He sold it for like $875 million. And then he just became a photographer and just lived life. Like he doesn't do anything in tech anymore. He's just coasting. That's the dream to me. You have money and you can just do whatever you want after.
Trust me. Yeah, I tell people that a lot. I'm like, I only want to create change in two sectors and I'm good. Agri and health. So if I can build an agri-tech startup and also manage to do something in healthcare, and I'm good. I'll just retire.
Do you have another health venture that you're thinking about starting as well? Is that something on the horizon for you?
For now, it's all Crop2Cash, but then it should be very, very nice to have a research facility. It is something that I hope to build, and it should most likely be free, and it should be donor focused. So it would be more or less like an health NGO. It should be my giving back, and it should be directed towards cancer victims and victims of other internal organ diseases that are very, very prevalent and very, very deadly in Nigeria, like diabetes, like high blood pressure, and mostly cancer, because I lost my grandma to cancer, and it just sucks. So I am looking to do something in that space. So I hope to make a lot of money from Crop2Cash so that I can really just kickstart that and get some of my friends on board. I already told Michael we'll be successful, so you're gonna invest in this. You don't have a choice.
You already have your first investor lined up. This is perfect. You're already set to go. I did want to touch on a couple last questions before we wrap up. And looking forward, what Crop2Cash is doing is not only helping farmers, but it's also looking at improving the agriculture system in general. And with that, I was curious to hear your thoughts about the effect that issues like climate change have on the work that you're doing as well, or how climate change influences how you approach farmers. I learned a little bit about the town of, forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, it's called Makoko. It's the floating,
yes, Makoko.
Yeah, the floating village that used to be a fisherman kind of colony. And I found it amazing because, of course, this is an entire population of people who've built something out of nothing, schools, an entire infrastructure. But of course, climate change is one of the things that puts them at, huge risk. But also Lagos is, people don't know, it is on the water, right? So it's basically an island. So of course, water and climate change, sea level rising is all going to have an impact on life there. So I was very curious, is climate change something that you think about when looking at the way you're building your business? And is it something that has had an impact on the way you build? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So if you're working in the agri space, your biggest opposition is climate change. And the reason why I said that is a lot of our farmers are in the crop business. They're in the crop production business. And there is one key ingredient you need for a successful crop production enterprise. And that is rainfall, when you need it, and at the amount. And one thing I've learned with climate change is that is never going to be the reality until we solve the climate crisis. Lots of them they are plagued with dry spells, moments when you're supposed to have some rainfall, there are dry spell. And even during the dry season, a lot of their dams, irrigation dams, are drying up real fast. And when the rain is here, it's sometimes too much that it causes flooding. So one thing that I've always been part of what we do is trying to make farmers as climate resilient as possible. And we got a grant from GSMA to do that under their Climate Innovation Fund. I was the one that championed the research for that particular grant. And I think we just closed the grant some months ago. That was interesting for us because we were able to get them climate resilient seeds and also to provide knowledge materials and knowledge trainings on how to better cultivate their crops in good agricultural practices and climate resilient strategies. And one thing that I also did was I designed a weather advisory product for farmers. And this weather advisory products advise farmers based on their level of production and also the type of crop that they're producing. So it is rainfall based. We use rainfall information. We get rainfall prediction through satellite imagery and satellite data. And then we use that to advise them using elements like heavy indicators, chances of rain, all of that. So a crazy thing happened when we launched the product initially. We deployed it in Kaduna. And a lot of the farmers, one of the reasons why I designed this product was it was not towards generating profits. It was just more or less like a free gift. And I instructed my co-founders like, oh, we're not making money from this. So this rainfall weather advisory product was deployed to these farmers, and it gave them an advice that they should not visit the farm at a particular point in time. And some of them dismissed the advice and went anyways. So we got the best customer feedback from the people that ignored the advice. They called our customer support and was like, what are you guys, wizards or what? How did you know it was going to rain? We saw the message, but we ignored it. We thought it wasn't going to rain. I was like, it's science. It's not witchcraft. But at the same time, why did you ignore the message? They're like, oh, we thought it was weather advice for your region. I was like, I know where you're based. I can see your farm. So when I give you advice, just try as much as possible to follow it. So we try. So those are moments when I've really faced what's climate change and the threat it poses to most of these operations. And trust me, if things were all perfect, we would have beat the food crisis our generation is in.
It affects us all at this point. And it's affecting farmers and our ability for food safety and food security in the US. There's been a lot of people that have been shocked to see the impacts of climate change already happening, right? In ways that none of us could have imagined and happening so much more rapidly than we ever thought. There's places that weren't even by the coast that faced hurricanes, it's very scary. And it's great that you are speaking with these farmers and providing them with resources to be able to, as you said, be resilient to what's happening. What is the attitude around climate change in Nigeria?
Like you rightfully said, everybody feels it now. So it makes the conversation a little bit easier to have. But I also have this theory whereby I feel like Nigeria is still stuck in the conversation phase of things, and we should be in the action or activity phase right now. Enough talking, a lot more doing. So sometimes we see policies, they want to introduce policies on how to reduce plastic waste, and then after a while, you don't hear anything about it anymore. And I feel like we could be doing a lot more. It should be action at this point and not just conversations, strategy sessions. Right now, it should be actions, monitoring and evaluation, impact assessment, and the likes. So I feel like we could do a lot more. But then credit to them for even having the conversations, and to the ones that have been doing it, more credit. I have been trying to be more of a climate advocate and be much more vocal when it comes to things that affect our climate. I've met lots of waste tech founders, spoken to a lot of them, and I feel like if the investment could be channeled and funneled towards these particular startups and not just, should I say, fintech startups and the likes, they could do a lot more. So I met this founder that is from Lagos. His name is Bolu, a organization called Scrap2Cash. And basically what it does is collects a lot of these plastic materials and converts them into much more portable and carryable solutions. And then they use them and extend them to recyclers. And that's been really wonderful. It's one of the many innovations that we could do with Also, some of our energy poverty issues could be solved with natural energy. And also, like I always say, there's always a blessing in disguise one way or the other. So there has been a recent surge in fuel prices in Nigeria. Price of fuel have maybe gone 10x. So people are looking towards much more climate resilient solutions like solar inverters. A lot more farmers are using solar-based irrigation. We are also positioned in that aspect, and we've been helping these farmers in getting these solutions. And it's been an incredible journey, but I feel like we still need to do a lot more in our time.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that context into what's been going on. The thing that's so interesting is I love hearing everything that is on the horizon, all the opportunities that are still in Nigeria, but also it seems that you and your company are not looking at Crop2Cash as just one company, but as potentially a conduit to help support a lot of different sectors or ventures that are actually sort of intertwined, right? So climate versus agriculture versus, potentially health equity and opportunities, they're all kind of fitting in together. And obviously Crop2Cash seems to be the vehicle that you're using to really help build more prosperity for a lot of people. I'm going to wrap it up with our last question. Listeners that are listening to this right now that want to support what you're doing, or investors or anybody that is curious about Crop2Cash, what is the best way for them to support your company or to follow your journey? And what would be your call to action for them if you could give them one?
So one thing I try to tell people is that we're on a very interesting journey to transform Nigeria's agricultural landscape forever. And what most of the things we've built and the things we're building are innovations that would live beyond most of what we've even laid the foundations for. So one thing I realized is it's a very humbling process when you've managed to build something that has grown bigger than you. Like my brainchild is 6 years, it's gonna be 7 years in a couple of months, and the magnitude is really crazy. I have worked with over 500,000 farmers in Nigeria. 500,000 farmers is a lot. There's still room for more because the smallholder population in Nigeria is like 18 million, 19 million. So even in Nigeria alone, and we're looking to expand into other African countries, we recently launched an AI advisory product that is basically toll-free for farmers, and it gives them up-to-date information at any time. And what we try to get from that is we get lots of market intelligence and data, real-time data and insights from all of this. And that is what we're trying to position ourselves into. We're transforming this particular ecosystem, and it should be very nice to join us, have conversations with us, even if it's encouragement, introductions. If you could introduce us to organizations that would like to be a part of this, and if you would personally like to be a part of this, you can always reach out to myself or any member of the team. And just looking forward to having more people in our corner. It takes a village to raise a child, so I'm inviting the entire village to raise this great child of mine.
I love that so much. I honestly am leaving this conversation feeling not only really excited about what you're building at Crop2Cash, but even more stoked because I've been wanting to go to Lagos forever. So I'm very excited to one day be able
you should
to
visit. You should
meet you
visit
there and see. I will. I'm putting that on my top 3 places I need to go to. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. If you are interested at all in learning about what Crop2Cash is doing, I will put all the information below in the show notes so that you have everything you need to be able to reach out to Seyi and his team. And yeah, thank you for everything and taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure. I had the best time chatting with you.
Thanks for tuning into the Founders Atlas. I hope you enjoyed the ride. To learn more about what Seyi is building with Crop2Cash, head to our show notes and give us a like, a follow, rating, subscribe. Anything you can do to show some love. It really helps more than you know. Tune in next week as we travel to Namibia.